Coming up in this video, we're going to be making some potato rolls from an old Mennonite recipe, but I have tweaked it so I can be successful every time I make it. This has been a couple years in the making. I have been searching and searching for a good potato roll, and I think I have found it. And I've made it so that you can be successful at it just as well as I am. So come along and we'll get started. For this recipe, we're going to be using 1 1/3 cups of instant potato flakes, 1 2/3 cups of boiling water, 3/4 of a cup of milk, 1/2 cup of butter or a stick, 1/4 cup of shortening, 2 teaspoons of salt, 1/4 cup of sugar, 5 eggs, 2 tablespoons of dry active yeast, and 8 cups of bread flour. So into a small saucepan, we're gonna scald our milk over medium-low heat. So on my stove, that'll be about 3.5. We're gonna scald our milk, meaning it's gonna be reaching 180 degrees. I'm using my heat gun here to be able to know what temperature it is. It's about 98 degrees now. And on my stove, I have it at maybe a 3.5, which is, low to medium heat. And the reason that milk needs to be heated up, I looked it up on the Food Network website, and it says, in fact, scalded milk actually speeds up the rate which yeast will cause bread to rise because the yeast starts working more quickly in warm liquids rather than the cool ones. And since I'm using raw milk, it also might just be there to kill bacteria. So older recipes will tell you definitely to start with scalding your milk first. But I think those are the types of recipes I want because they have way more flavor and they work better. Don't walk away from this. Keep an eye on it because no one wants their milk boiling over. Ask me how I know. All right, it has reached 182, so I'm going to turn off the burner. I'm going to add my sugar so that dissolves. And our salt. And our shortening. And our butter. You can probably get away with using all butter, but the recipe called for shortening, so I didn't want to deter too fast away from shortening if it called for it. In fact, it called for 3/4 of a cup of shortening, but I didn't think that was a good idea. I'm going to keep it on the burner just so it gets the shortening and the butter to melt quicker, but I'm sure it will cool off just as quick either way, but we'll use that residual heat as long as we have it. And with this stuff, it's so nice to have your mise en place in place, which means everything in place, because one time I was rushing to make this recipe and I accidentally added twice the amount of sugar. So it's very helpful to keep everything around ready when you're making this to start with. So you want this to get down to 110 degrees, which is obviously not there yet. Oh, it says it is. But you want to make sure your butter and your shortening is melted. And you don't want to get below 100 degrees. Next, I'm just going to heat up my water. Then when my water starts to boil, I'm going to pour it over my potato flakes and let them reconstitute. Because if I would have just said mashed potatoes, people like mashed potatoes in different ways. I mean, some people like theirs runny, some people like them thick. So using instant mashed potatoes with a certain amount of water leads us to be more successful because we all have the same variable that we're working with. All right, we'll let those cool down. I'm going to crack our eggs into the mixer. beat our eggs. Then we're going to add our milk mixture. I'm going to double check it to see if it's the right temperature. And you also want to make sure that sugar and salt's dissolved and the shortening and butter is melted. Then we're going to add our mashed potatoes. And see how hot they still are? So we're going to mix this well. All right, we're going to count out 3 cups of bread flour and we're going to put it in the stand mixer since our liquid is down below 110. Now, you don't want to put your measuring cup into your vessel here where your flour is, because that could pack your flour into the cup and your flour will weigh more. So I just scoop it in and level it off. That way the bread is nice and fluffy when we're done with this recipe. This is my 3rd recipe I've worked with. The first one my aunt gave me, and I just thought the rolls were just too dry. And then I found another recipe online, and I found that one to have way too much sugar in. My husband enjoyed them, but I said that can't be something we can live off of. All right, so we have our 3 cups of flour, and we're gonna mix it. All right, now for the most important ingredient, our yeast. All right, now we're gonna add 5 more cups of flour. All right, next we're gonna mix well. This is my own thoughts on the bread dough mixing together. There's different stages. Like first it's all really crumbly and it doesn't look like it's gonna come together, but then it's just slowly, just magically clumps together and it cleans away from the bowl. It's not sticking to the bowl. All right, see how it's basically came together and it's scraping itself away from the bowl and the bowl is clean? That is when you want to start your timer for your knead. This is something I always struggled with until I got it. We're gonna knead this 5 to 7 minutes. Alright, you want to make sure your dough is smooth and elastic. It looks like it's a little bit sticky. No fear, you can put flour in, you just can't take it out. Gonna sprinkle some in. Then we're gonna dust our hands with some flour. And take the dough hook out. The stickiness all depends on your humidity level, the temperature of your house. It all has variables, but bread is still achievable no matter what life throws at you. I have this big bowl right here that's clean, and I'm gonna put spray in it. And onto our clean counter here, I'm just gonna knead it a few times. If you don't mind stickiness of the dough, I say go for it, because the one time I thought I put too much water in it and didn't put any more flour in it, they were so fluffy. So if you want to work to that level, go for it. So just want to work in this little bit of flour. And just pull it towards yourself and push it out. Bread is easier than you think. It's just knowing how to adjust to what is in front of you. All right, so this is a smooth and soft dough and a little bit tacky, but I think that's all right. So I'm going to put it in my clean bowl. We're going to put a clean tea towel over it and let it rise for an hour in a warm spot. The dough rose so beautifully. Isn't it pretty? I think so. Now let's get it punched down. Butter, but I'm just going to put them in the oven here and get them baked. Now the rolls are going to bake for about 23 minutes. I would say anywhere from 23 to 25 minutes. Then the loaf of bread, that's going to bake for 35 minutes. And I better get supper started because it's like 9:30 at night and husband should be coming home soon. So my oven decides to malfunction. The top element was beet red and burnt the rolls. So we've been waiting on parts, and this is why I haven't put up the video sooner. Well, life happens. And the rolls won't go to waste. I'll just cut the tops off and use it in my pineapple stuffing for this Easter weekend. If you want to watch that video, I'll link that at the end of this video. You will want to let these cool down on the pans for about 5 minutes. Then you want to transfer them to a cooling rack. But don't these look delightful? All right, let's rip into one of these and show you how airy they are and how fluffy and light they are.
Very good, nice and soft.
How many are you going to order?
This will be all tonight.
Are you sure?
Mm-hmm.